They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the ones closest to you. And I never thought I'd live to understand just how true that saying was. For most of my life, I believed betrayal was something that happened in movies or stories you overheard at family gatherings. You know, the dramatic kind of tales, where someone turns their back on the very people who trusted them. It always felt like distant fiction. But then, it wasn't fiction anymore. It became my reality. Because the very person who tried to destroy me, the one who almost succeeded in tearing apart the life I had built, wasn't some stranger on the street. It wasn't a coworker with hidden jealousy. It wasn't even an acquaintance I barely knew. No, it was someone who had smiled at me across the dinner table, who had stood beside me at family events, who hugged me as if she cared. Someone who pretended to be family. And when I say pretended, I mean it in the cruelest way possible. Because while she laughed with me, while she whispered secrets in my ear, while she pretended to care about me and my husband behind my back, she was weaving a web so twisted, so carefully spun, that even I didn't notice the strands until I was trapped in the middle of it. I want you to imagine what that feels like. Imagine trusting someone so much that you let them into the deepest corners of your life. You share your joys, your struggles, your everyday moments. And while you're doing that, while you're opening yourself up, they're quietly sharpening the knife they plan to stab you with. That's what betrayal really is. It's not just the act of being hurt. It's the silence before it happens, the fake smile, the false comfort, the "I'll always be here for you." It's the performance that makes the final reveal cut 10 times deeper. When I first met her, I didn't see a rival. I didn't see danger. I saw family. She was warm. She was charming, and she seemed like someone I could trust. And for a while, I truly believed that. She played her role perfectly. But behind that friendly face, she was calculating, watching, waiting. Every kindness was just another piece in the puzzle she was building. A puzzle designed to make my marriage fall apart. And here's the thing about betrayal. It never knocks at the door. It sneaks in quietly, like a shadow. And by the time you notice, it's already standing in the middle of your home. I wish I could say I spotted the signs early. I wish I could say I was clever enough to see through the act. But the truth, I didn't. Not at first. I welcomed her. I trusted her. And I believed she wanted the best for me. But soon, the cracks started to show. Small comments, strange glances, half smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. At first, I ignored them. I thought, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm being paranoid. But I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining it. Because one day, I would find out exactly what she had been planning. And let me tell you this, it wasn't small. It wasn't harmless. It wasn't just gossip or petty jealousy. No, it was much darker than that. She wanted my marriage destroyed. She wanted me broken. Why? That's the question I kept asking myself. Why would someone I had trusted, someone I treated like family, want to see me hurt? Was it jealousy? Was it obsession? Was it hatred that she masked with fake affection? The truth is, sometimes there is no clear reason. Sometimes people hurt you simply because they can, because your happiness reminds them of everything they don't have. And instead of building their own joy, they try to burn yours down. And she tried. She really did. But here's the part she never saw coming. Here's the part she could never prepare for. While she was busy playing her little game in the shadows, I was learning. I was growing. And when the truth finally came to light, when I finally saw the pieces she had been moving all along, I realized something important. If she wanted to play a game, I was going to make sure I won. And when the pieces fell into place, when every lie she told finally crumbled under the weight of the truth, it wasn't my marriage that collapsed. It wasn't my life that shattered. It was hers. Because the thing about betrayal is this. The betrayer always thinks they're smarter, stronger, untouchable. But what they forget is that lies can only last so long. Eventually, truth walks in. And when it does, it doesn't just knock over the game board, it burns the whole thing to the ground. This is the story of how she tried to ruin my marriage. And this is the story of how I ruined her game. They say every story has two beginnings. The one you remember fondly, and the one you wish you had paid more attention to. If you asked me back then, I would have told you that my life was perfect, truly, blissfully, wonderfully perfect. I was married to a man I loved with all my heart. He wasn't just my husband, he was my partner, my friend, my safe place in a world that could sometimes feel so cruel. When people looked at us from the outside, they often said, "You two are lucky. You're the kind of couple everyone wishes they could be." And honestly, I believed them. We laughed together. We worked through our struggles side by side. And no matter what life threw at us, we always seemed to come out stronger. There were nights we would sit at the dinner table, candles flickering softly between us, talking about dreams, plans, and silly little things that made us laugh until our sides ached. On weekends, we'd go on long walks, sometimes holding hands in silence, sometimes lost in deep conversations about everything and nothing at all. I trusted him completely. He trusted me. That trust was the foundation of everything we had built together. And yet, while we were living in that bubble of happiness, there was someone watching. Someone standing just close enough to share in our smiles but far enough away to see cracks we couldn't. Someone who, instead of feeling joy for us, felt something dark or envy. Her name was Elena, my husband's cousin. To most of the family, Elena was charming. She had a quick wit, a smile that lit up a room, and a way of making everyone feel like they were her favorite person in the world. At least, that's what it looked like. When I first met her, I remember thinking, this is someone I can really get along with. She welcomed me into the family with open arms. She complimented my dress, asked me about my hobbies, and even joked that we were going to be sisters. Now that I had married into the family, at family dinners, she would sit beside me, whispering little jokes about the older relatives, making me laugh. She always seemed to know exactly how to make me feel included, and I wanted to believe that kindness was real. For a while, it was easy to trust her. But then came the little things. The first time it happened, I almost didn't notice. We were sitting together at a family gathering, plates of food in front of us, when she leaned in and said with a smile, "You're so lucky. He does everything for you, doesn't he? I wish I had someone like that." Her words sounded sweet enough, but the way she said them, with that small edge of bitterness beneath the surface, made me pause. Still, I brushed it off. After all, everyone gets envious sometimes, right? But it didn't stop there. At another dinner, when my husband got up to refill my drink without me even asking, Elena laughed and said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "Wow, he spoils you. Careful, you'll forget how to do anything for yourself." Everyone laughed. Even I chuckled awkwardly. But inside, I felt that sting again. Was it really just a joke, or something more? The pattern continued. Every compliment she gave me seemed to carry a shadow. "You always look so put together. I don't know how you have the time." If I had a husband who didn't mind when I looked tired, maybe I wouldn't bother so much. "You two are so perfect. Almost too perfect. Sometimes it doesn't even feel real." On the surface, it was all wrapped in smiles and laughter. To everyone else, it was harmless banter. But I could feel the undercurrent, the envy hiding just beneath her words. And then there were the looks. I'd catch her watching us when she thought no one was paying attention. Her eyes would follow the way he brushed my hair back from my face, or how he leaned over to whisper something that made me laugh. There was something in her gaze I couldn't quite place, something sharp, something calculating. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. After all, she was family. She cared about us. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me. But sometimes denial is the easiest lie we tell ourselves. Looking back now, I realize those small comments, those strange glances, were the first cracks in the foundation. They were warning signs, whispers of a storm that was slowly building on the horizon. But at the time, I was too busy being happy, too busy believing in the fairy tale of my marriage and the illusion of family loyalty. And Elena, she knew that. She knew exactly how to play her role. She didn't attack directly. No, that would have been too obvious. Instead, she built her game slowly, carefully, like a spider spinning its web one strand at a time. She would spend more time at our house, always with some excuse. "I was just in the neighborhood," she'd say, flashing that same charming smile. Or, "I brought some food. Thought we could all share dinner together." And of course, I welcomed her. Why wouldn't I? She was family. But little by little, her presence became constant. She was always there laughing with us, eating with us, inserting herself into every part of our lives. And while I thought she was simply being supportive, in reality, she was studying us, watching, waiting. At the time, though, I didn't see any of that. All I saw was the happy life I had built with the men I loved, a life I thought no one could ever take away. If only I had known then that Elena wasn't there to celebrate our happiness. She was there to unravel it. They say betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It comes like whispers, soft, subtle, poisonous, until you can't tell the difference between truth and lies anymore. With Elena, it began innocently enough. At least, that's how it seemed. One evening, after a long family dinner, she leaned in while we were cleaning up dishes. Her voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "You know, I probably shouldn't say this," she began, then paused, as if wrestling with her conscience. I looked at her, curious. "Say what?" She hesitated, then sighed dramatically. "It's probably nothing, but I thought I saw your husband at a cafe last week. With someone. A woman." My heart skipped a beat. "A woman?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual, even though my chest had tightened. She gave a small, apologetic smile. "Yes, but maybe it was just a co-worker. I could be wrong. Forget I said anything." And just like that, she walked away. I tried to brush it off. My husband worked with women all the time. There was nothing unusual about that. But her words stayed in my head like a thorn I couldn't pull out. With someone. A woman. That night, lying next to him in bed, I found myself staring at the ceiling, questions swirling in my mind. I hated myself for doubting him. I loved him. I trusted him. And yet, the seed had been planted, and Elena knew exactly what she was doing. It didn't stop there. Another time, we were all at a barbecue with friends. My husband was across the yard, laughing with a group of people. Elena slid up beside me, holding her drink, her eyes fixed on him. "He's so charming, isn't he?" she said casually. Then, without looking at me, she added, "Almost too charming. I can see why women might have a hard time staying away." Her words stung, but her tone was so casual, so light, that if I reacted, I'd look paranoid. So I stayed quiet. I smiled. I swallowed the unease rising in my chest. But later that night, when he told me about his day, about the people he had talked to, I found myself listening differently, analyzing his tone, searching for cracks in his words. And then came the rumors. Elena never stated things outright. No, she was smarter than that. Instead, she'd sprinkle doubts in subtle, poisonous doses. "Oh, your husband was late again? Must be all those late-night meetings. You're so understanding. I don't think I could handle it." Or when I'd share something sweet he did for me, she'd laugh softly and say, "That's nice." But sometimes people overcompensate when they're hiding something, always with a smile, always wrapped in the disguise of concern or humor. It was genius, in a twisted way. She never gave me proof, only suggestions, hints, enough to make me question, enough to make me doubt. And doubt is a dangerous poison. The cracks began to show at home. At first, it was small things. I'd ask casually, "So, who were you with at lunch today?" He'd look at me puzzled. "Just co-workers." "Why?" "No reason," I'd say quickly, forcing a smile. But inside, I was listening for hesitation, watching his face for signs of guilt. Then, one evening, I asked why he had been late. His answer was calm traffic, a delayed meeting, but something in me snapped. "Are you sure?" I asked, sharper than I intended. Because Elena mentioned. The moment I said her name, his expression hardened. "Elena?" he repeated, his voice low, controlled. "What exactly did she say?" I froze. I hadn't meant to reveal it. I stumbled over my words. "Nothing really. She thought she saw you somewhere, that's all." His jaw tightened. He didn't yell, but the silence between us was heavier than any shouting could have been. That night, we went to bed back to back. For the first time in our marriage, I felt a wall between us. It only got worse. Every doubt, every seed Elena planted, grew into arguments. Why are you home so late? You don't trust me? Why would Elena even say that? Why are you believing her over me? I hated the person I was becoming, suspicious, paranoid, defensive, but I couldn't help it. Her words replayed in my mind like a broken record, and each fight drove another wedge between us. One evening, after another tense dinner, I stepped outside to breathe. Elena followed me. She put her hand on my shoulder, her voice soft, sympathetic. I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause trouble. She paused, then looked me straight in the eye. But you deserve to know the truth. She doesn't really love you, you know. Not the way you think. I've seen it. The way she looks at other women. The way he hides things from you. Her words were daggers, but she delivered them like a friend offering comfort. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her to stop. But a part of me, the part she had been carefully feeding, listened. And in that moment, standing under the porch light, I felt my marriage shift. The love was still there, yes, but it was buried under suspicion, under fear, under doubt. And Elena, she stood there with that sympathetic smile, knowing she had done exactly what she set out to do. She had planted the seeds of betrayal, and those seeds were growing roots. Looking back, I can see it so clearly now. Every word, every concern, every little rumor was part of her plan. But at the time, I was blind. I thought I was being cautious. I thought I was protecting my marriage by paying attention to the warning signs. I didn't realize that the real threat wasn't coming from outside my home. It was standing right beside me, whispering lies in my ear. They say lies have short legs, but when they're dressed up just right, they can sprint faster than the truth ever can. And Elena, she dressed her lies perfectly. By this point, the cracks in my marriage were visible to anyone who looked closely enough. My husband and I weren't laughing the way we used to. Our conversations, once warm and easy, now felt laced with tension, suspicion, and silence. And Elena, she seemed to thrive on it. The more we fought, the more concerned she became, offering me sympathetic looks, whispered reassurances, and slowly, more evidence. It started with a text message. One afternoon, she stopped by while my husband was at work. She looked pale, hesitant, as if she were carrying the weight of a terrible secret. I really didn't want to show you this, she said, pulling out her phone. But I can't let you keep living in the dark. I hated the person I was becoming. Suspicious, paranoid, defensive, but I couldn't help it. Her words replayed in my mind like a broken record, and each fight drove another wedge between us. One evening, after another tense dinner, I stepped outside to breathe. Elena followed me. She put her hand on my shoulder, her voice soft, sympathetic. I'm sorry. I never wanted to cause trouble. She paused, then looked me straight in the eye. But you deserve to know the truth. She doesn't really love you, you know. Not the way you think. I've seen it. The way she looks at other women. The way he hides things from you. Her words were daggers, but she delivered them like a friend offering comfort. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her to stop. But a part of me, the part she had been carefully feeding, listened. And in that moment, standing under the porch light, I felt my marriage shift. The love was still there, yes, but it was buried under suspicion, under fear, under doubt. And Elena, she stood there with that sympathetic smile, knowing she had done exactly what she set out to do. She had planted the seeds of betrayal, and those seeds were growing roots. Looking back, I can see it so clearly now. Every word, every concern, every little rumor was part of her plan. But at the time, I was blind. I thought I was being cautious. I thought I was protecting my marriage by paying attention to the warning signs. I didn't realize that the real threat wasn't coming from outside my home. It was standing right beside me, whispering lies in my ear. They say lies have short legs, but when they're dressed up just right, they can sprint faster than the truth ever can. And Elena, she dressed her lies perfectly. By this point, the cracks in my marriage were visible to anyone who looked closely enough. My husband and I weren't laughing the way we used to. Our conversations, once warm and easy, now felt laced with tension, suspicion, and silence. And Elena, she seemed to thrive on it. The more we fought, the more concerned she became, offering me sympathetic looks, whispered reassurances, and slowly, more evidence. It started with a text message. One afternoon, she stopped by while my husband was at work. She looked pale, hesitant, as if she were carrying the weight of a terrible secret. "I really didn't want to show you this," she said, pulling out her phone. "But I can't let you keep living in the dark." She handed me her phone. On the screen was a screenshot of a text conversation. A man's number saved as my husband's name, with flirty messages to another woman, heart emojis, promises of meeting up, words no wife ever wants to see. I stared at it, my hands trembling, my throat closed up. Where did you get this?" I whispered. She bit her lip, her eyes filled with rehearsed sorrow. "I told you I saw him." I didn't want to believe it either, but I couldn't just ignore it. I had a friend send me proof. My heart was hammering so loudly, I could barely think. The messages looked real, too real. Was this it? The proof she'd been planting seeds for all along? When my husband came home that night, I couldn't hold it in. I confronted him. "Who is she?" I demanded, shoving the screenshot at him. He blinked at the phone, utterly confused. What is this? Don't play dumb." My voice broke. "You've been lying to me." "These messages." He stared at me, then back at the screen. His face hardened. "That's not me." But my mind was too clouded, too poisoned. "How can you say that? Your name is right there. These are your words." He swore, running his hand through his hair. "This isn't my number. Someone faked this. Don't you trust me?" Trust. That word cut like a knife. Because I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe him. But Elena's words echoed in my head. Sometimes people overcompensate when they're hiding something. And the doubt, oh the doubt, it screamed louder than my husband's protests. For the first time, I looked into his eyes and wondered if he was lying to me. But Elena wasn't done. A week later, she accidentally let me see something else. We were scrolling through social media on her phone, looking at a mutual friend's pictures, when suddenly she paused, pretending to hesitate. "Oh, maybe I shouldn't." "What?" I asked, leaning in. There on the screen was a picture. My husband or someone who looked very much like him sitting in a restaurant, across from a woman, their heads close together, smiling. The caption, posted from a burner account, read, "Date night." My stomach dropped. I grabbed the phone, zooming in, analyzing every detail. The lighting, the angle, the shape of his face. It looked like him. The resemblance was uncanny. Where did this come from? I asked, my voice barely audible. Elena gave me that same pained look. I told you. He's been hiding things. I didn't want you to see this. But maybe it's better if you know the truth now than later. I felt sick. My chest was heavy. My world tilting. When I showed my husband that night, his reaction was furious. "This isn't me," he shouted, slamming his hands on the table. "This is insane. Don't you know me better than this? Don't you see what's happening?" But the photo, the texts, the whispers, they stacked against him like bricks, while his words felt like feathers. I wanted to scream, to run, to believe him, but doubt had built itself a fortress in my mind. And for the first time since we married, I didn't feel like I was standing beside him. I felt like I was standing against him. The loneliness was unbearable. Every time I tried to explain to a friend or a family member, Elena was there subtly twisting the knife. "Oh, she's just stressed. She doesn't want to admit what's happening. I've seen the signs. I just hope she doesn't get hurt more." Her fake sympathy made me look unstable, paranoid, insecure. Even my husband, tired of fighting the shadow of lies, grew distant. Our once loving home turned cold, like strangers sharing a space but not a life. I was trapped in a nightmare, isolated from the man I loved and manipulated by the woman who called herself family. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just gossip gone too far. This was a plan. A calculated, twisted game Elena had been playing from the start. The whispers, the texts, the photos, it was all staged, all fabricated. And I had been the perfect puppet. One night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at those fake screenshots. That fake photo, my tears blurring the screen. My hands were shaking, my heart breaking, when something inside me finally shifted. Enough of the doubt. Enough of the manipulation. Enough of Elena controlling my mind, my marriage, my life. That's when I whispered to myself, through clenched teeth, if she wants to play a game, then I'm going to end it. Betrayal burns, but nothing fuels clarity quite like pain. That night, as I sat with those fake screenshots glowing on my phone, I realized something. If Elena could orchestrate such a convincing illusion, then surely she could slip up too. And when she did, I'd be ready. From that moment forward, my role changed. I stopped being the victim. I stopped reacting. Instead, I began watching, listening, collecting. She thought she had me trapped in her little theater of lies. But she didn't know the curtains were about to fall on her. The first part of my plan was simple. Silence. No more late-night fights with my husband. No more asking Elena questions that gave her clues about what I was thinking. I acted exactly the way she wanted, a broken, suspicious wife too blinded by pain to see the truth. Inside, though, my eyes were wide open. Every time she spoke, I noted her words. Every time she accidentally showed me something, I studied it. I noticed things I hadn't before, timestamps that didn't match, screenshots cropped strangely. Even the angle of that restaurant photo, that looked suspiciously like it was taken from Google Images. The more I looked, the more cracks I saw in her story, and each crack was a thread I could pull. One evening, I decided to test her. I casually mentioned over tea that my husband would be working late the following Friday. In truth, he'd be home with me. Elena's eyes lit up in a way she didn't think I noticed. She smiled sympathetically, saying, "Oh, poor you. He's working so hard lately." I let it go. I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. But that Friday, when my husband sat right beside me on the couch, his phone silent, his hands nowhere near another woman, Elena texted me a photo. It was of a man who looked like my husband, blurry from behind in a dimly lit bar. The caption read, "I'm so sorry you have to see this, but you deserve to know." I stared at it, my lips curling into a smile. Gotcha. From then on, I became a collector. I saved every text, every screenshot she sent me. Every time she slipped up and contradicted herself, I wrote it down. I even went a step further. I recorded some of our conversations. When she whispered in my ear about how she hated seeing me hurt, I let my phone capture her voice. When she made little slips, like confusing the details of her own fake stories, I saved those too. Piece by piece, her web of lies unraveled in my private collection. But I needed more. Something undeniable. That's when I decided to bring in reinforcements. There was one person I knew I could count on, my husband's best friend, Mark. Mark had known my husband since college, and he had always been brutally honest with me. If my husband had been cheating, Mark would have been the first to tell me. So one afternoon, I called him. Through tears, some real, some strategic. I explained what Elena had been doing. I showed him the screenshots, the photos, the messages. Mark studied them carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing second. Finally, he looked up at me. "This is fake," he said firmly. "I know him. He's never even been to that restaurant. And look, this photo? It's been edited. You can see the shadows don't line up." Hearing someone else confirm what my gut had started to scream was like a shot of adrenaline. Mark didn't just believe me, he offered to help. Together, we began piecing together Elena's lies like detectives on a case. If Elena loved playing games, I was going to give her one. I crafted a little story of my own. One evening, while she was within earshot, I accidentally left my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, displaying a text message I had staged with Mark's help. It read, "Thanks again for helping me set up the surprise for husband's name next weekend. He has no idea what's coming." I made sure Elena saw it. Her reaction? A flicker of panic across her face. She asked casually, "What's that about?" I shrugged, playing dumb. "Oh, nothing important. Just a friend helping with something." That night, I waited, and sure enough, ding. My phone buzzed with a new message from Elena. "Hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news again, but I heard your husband is planning something behind your back." Maybe that's what the message was about. I laughed out loud when I read it. She had taken the bait. At this point, I had enough evidence to know her lies were deliberate, but I wanted to end it in a way she could never recover from. So I devised the perfect setup. My husband and I planned a small dinner with a few close friends, including Mark, and of course, I invited Elena. During dinner, I steered the conversation toward relationships, trust, and betrayal. Elena, smug as ever, jumped right in with her false sympathy act, dropping hints about how sometimes men aren't who they seem. That's when I pulled out my phone. With the whole table watching, I played a recording. Elena's own voice filled the room. "She's so naive. She actually believes those screenshots. By the time I'm done, she'll leave him and everyone will see who the real victim is." The room went silent. My heart raced, but I didn't flinch. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. And then Mark spoke up. "We've been tracking everything. The screenshots are fake. The photos are doctored. You've been lying to her, to all of us." The silence shattered into gasps, whispers, and stunned stares. Elena tried to backpedal, claiming it was a joke or taken out of context, but no one believed her. The mask was off. The game was over, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift off my chest. But here's the thing about revenge, it's not always about shouting or throwing punches. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is letting the truth speak louder than the lies. That night, Elena left the house humiliated, exposed, her power stripped away. She had tried to destroy my marriage, but all she managed to destroy was her own credibility. And me? For the first time in a long time, I slept soundly, because I knew this was only the beginning of her downfall. What she didn't realize was that I wasn't just clearing my name. I was setting the stage for a reckoning she could never escape. Because betrayal cuts deep. But revenge? Revenge leaves scars they can't hide. They say the truth has a way of breaking chains. But that night, it didn't just break chains, it shattered them. It all happened at a family gathering. It wasn't supposed to be anything extraordinary. Just a Sunday dinner at my in-laws' house, the kind of evening where cousins ran through hallways. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air, and conversations overlapped in warm, chaotic harmony. But underneath the laughter and clinking glasses, I knew a storm was about to break. Because I had come prepared. My husband and I had decided together, no more whispers, no more shadows. If Elena wanted to play her game in secret, then I would drag her into the light where everyone could see who she really was. And tonight was the night. At first, everything seemed normal. Elena floated around the dining room like she always did, smiling too sweetly, laughing too loudly, dropping little compliments laced with poison. "Oh, you two look so happy," she said, glancing between me and my husband with that slight tilt of her head. "I just hope it lasts. You never really know people, do you?" Her words were honey on the surface, but I caught the venom underneath. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, because I knew she was walking right into her own trap. When dessert was served, and everyone settled into that comfortable lull of conversation, I cleared my throat. "Actually," I began, my voice steady though my pulse raced, "there's something I'd like to share with everyone." Chairs creaked as heads turned toward me. Elena's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing across her face. I set my phone on the table and pressed play. And then, silence fell. Elena's own voice filled the room, dripping with arrogance. "She's so naive. She actually believes those screenshots. By the time I'm done, she'll leave him and everyone will see who the real victim is." The words hung in the air like thunder. Gasps echoed around the table. My husband's mother covered her mouth. My father-in-law froze mid-bite, his fork clattering to the plate. And Elena? She went pale. The smugness drained from her face, leaving nothing but panic. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling. That's not what it sounds like." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "No, Elena, that's exactly what it sounds like. You've been lying. You've been fabricating stories, faking evidence, trying to tear apart my marriage because you couldn't stand to see me happy." My husband placed his hand firmly over mine. I didn't believe her at first. He admitted to the room, his voice heavy, but I saw it. I doubted my own wife because of Elena's lies. And that's something I will never forgive myself for. His words cut deeper than I expected, but they made the truth undeniable. This wasn't just me against Elena anymore, this was both of us, standing together. Elena tried to backpedal. She laughed nervously, waving her hands. "It was just a joke. You know me. I exaggerate sometimes. I was only looking out for her." but no one was buying it. Mark, my husband's best friend, who had been waiting quietly in the corner, spoke up. We've examined every piece of evidence she gave. The screenshots are doctored. The photos are stolen from the internet. None of it is real. He laid out the proof on the table, side-by-side comparisons, inconsistencies, metadata, evidence so clear even a child could see it was fake. By now, whispers filled the room. Cousins shook their heads. My in-laws exchanged horrified looks. And Elena? She sat frozen, her eyes darting from face to face as she realized there was nowhere left to run. Then came the final strike. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You thought you were breaking us apart, but all you did was show us who you really are. And now, everyone sees it too." The room erupted, not in chaos, but in clarity. Her own family members turned away from her. One of the aunts whispered, "How could you?" Another cousin muttered, "This is sick." And my mother-in-law, a woman who had defended Elena countless times, shook her head slowly, her eyes full of disappointment. "Elena," she said quietly, "I don't even recognize you anymore." Those words hit harder than any evidence, because for Elena, reputation was everything. And in one night, it crumbled to dust. Elena pushed back from the table, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice breaking. "All of you. You'll see." But her words rang hollow, empty threats from someone who had lost the game. She stormed out of the room, her heels clicking like thunder, but nobody followed. Nobody defended her. The silence she left behind was heavier than any argument. And in that silence, I finally exhaled. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because revenge isn't always about screaming, "I won." Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is watching the person who tried to destroy you destroy themselves instead. Elena had played her game with lies, manipulation, and cruelty, but I had ended it with nothing more than the truth. And the truth had spoken louder than any rumor ever could. That night, as my husband held my hand tightly under the table, I knew one thing for certain. She would never, ever try this again. Because when a mask shatters in front of the people you live for, there's no putting it back together. Elena was finished, and we were stronger than ever. The silence after Elena left was deafening. It was as if the walls themselves were trying to absorb everything that had just been said, every ugly truth that had finally come to light. No one moved at first. No one spoke. And then slowly, like a tide pulling back after a storm, the murmurs began. I could see it in their faces: shock, disbelief, even a little shame. For months, Elena had been feeding them poison, whispering her lies like a snake coiling around their ears. And many of them had believed her. Now they sat staring at one another, realizing they'd been fooled. An uncle shook his head. "I defended her. I actually defended her against you," he muttered, almost to himself. "I can't believe I didn't see it." Cousins exchanged guilty glances. A few averted their eyes entirely. The weight of their silence said it all. They knew they had played into her hands, and now they had to sit with that. But the hardest part wasn't them. It was my husband. He turned to me, his face pale, his hands trembling as he held mine. "I should have trusted you," he whispered, his voice breaking. I let her words get inside my head. "I doubted you when you've never given me a reason to. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Tears stung my eyes. Not from anger this time, but from the rawness of his confession. I squeezed his hand. "You made a mistake, but we both survived it. That's what matters now." Because in that moment, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing what matters more, the pain of the betrayal or the strength of the bond that survived it. And we had survived. As for Elena, word spread quickly through the family. Texts started buzzing, phones lit up, and before the night was even over, she was already isolated. The same people she had once charmed, manipulated, and fooled now wanted nothing to do with her. No one rushed to her defense. No one excused her actions. She had built her identity on being the trusted one, the truth teller, the one who looked out for the family. But now, that mask was gone. And once a mask shatters in front of everyone, there's no way to put it back on. But even in victory, I wasn't celebrating. Because the truth is, I was exhausted. Winning didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for far too long. It felt like collapsing into a chair after carrying a weight no one else could see. I had been fighting for my marriage, for my sanity, for the truth, and now that it was over, I realized just how drained I truly was. It wasn't triumph I felt most. It was relief. Looking around that table, I saw damage, cracks in trust, wounds left open. But I also saw something else: strength. Because if Elena's lies had been strong enough to almost break us, then the truth was strong enough to hold us together. And in that moment, I knew something important. Revenge isn't always about destroying someone else. Sometimes it's about proving to yourself and to everyone watching that you are unbreakable. That night, Elena walked away alone, and I walked away with my husband's hand in mine, knowing that no matter how dark her game had been, she hadn't won. The truth had. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges of pain. Weeks passed after that explosive night, and though the memory of what Elena had done still lingered, the hold it had over me slowly loosened. At first, I carried the weight of it everywhere: in my chest, in my thoughts, in the silence between me and my husband. But little by little, that silence was filled again, with laughter, with conversations late into the night, with trust being rebuilt one small brick at a time. Our marriage didn't just survive, it grew stronger, because surviving betrayal is like surviving a storm. Once you've weathered it together, you realize just how unshakable your foundation really is. My husband never stopped showing me his remorse, not through grand gestures, but through the little things. Checking in with me, being transparent, reminding me with his actions, not just his words, that I was his choice, his partner, his anchor. And I found myself softening too, not forgetting what happened, but choosing not to let it define us. We had faced manipulation, doubt, and betrayal from someone we called family, and yet, here we were, side by side, stronger than before. That's when it hit me. Elena didn't ruin us. She revealed us. She revealed just how much we mattered to each other. As for the rest of the family, the ripples of her betrayal left their mark. Trust was broken, and for some, it may never fully return. But they learned a lesson too. Not everyone who speaks the loudest speaks the truth. Not everyone who acts like they're protecting you really has your best interests at heart. Sometimes enemies wear the face of family, and while that's a painful truth to swallow, it's one we all had to face. For me, the biggest lesson wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about Elena. It was about truth. Because lies may spread like wildfire, but truth is the rain. It may take time to fall, but when it does, it washes everything clean. I realized that my strength didn't come from tearing Elena down. My strength came from refusing to let her lies define me. from holding on long enough for the truth to shine through. And in that, I found peace. Looking back now, I can even say this. I'm grateful. Not grateful for the pain, not grateful for the betrayal, but grateful for the clarity it gave me. Grateful that I now know who truly stands with me and who never really did. Grateful that my marriage, tested by fire, came out stronger than steel. Elena thought she could ruin my life, but in the end, she only revealed how unshakable it really was. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Lies can wound, betrayal can scar, but truth will always have the last word. She tried to ruin my marriage, but in the end, she only ruined herself.